Kia ora mai tātou. Ko tai mai te wā. Ready for starting. We'd just like to acknowledge familiar faces, new faces, recycled faces here tonight. Choice that you're here, choice that our panelists and MC and crew are here from Network Waitangi. So kia ora mai tātou. Just like to start with the karakia to open our space as appropriately. Karanga tapu te mauri tū te whiwhi ai waho puritia mai waho tēnei te mauri ka whakakiki, tēnei te mauri ka whakakaka. He mauri kei runga, he mauri kei raro, ka puke waho keke te whai ao ki te ao marama, ti hei mauri ora. A tēnei te mihi atu ki ngā iwi take o te motu. Puta noa ki whangarei te ringa Parawhau. Tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou ngā karangatanga maha te motu. So ngā mihi kia koutou. Ko koutou ngā iwi take ngā mana whenua. I tēnei rohe i te taitokorau. Tēnei te mihi atu. He mihi hoki ki a tātou kua hui mai nei runga te karanga tara. Tēnei te mihi atu ki a tātou. We have come. Ngā mihi kia ki ngā tangata kua matei rātou kua haere ki tua te rai. Rātou ki a rātou. Tātou te kanohi ora te iau ko hatu ki a tātou. Huri noa ki te whare. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā ra tātou katoa. It's good that you're here tonight, and really warm welcome from Network Waitangi to yourselves, and acknowledging the mana whenua of these rohe around Whangārei, Te Ringa Parawhau and Taitokorau. Ngā mihi kia rātou. Our greetings to them, and our greetings to us who are here as the manuhiri, the guests of the tangata whenua, acknowledging our role here under the Treaty of Waitangi and the Whakaputanga. Tēnei te mihi atu ki tātou. Kia ora ki te whare, tēnā tātou. I'd just like to hand over to Yeta for some of our housekeeping at the beginning of the day. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Tim. Kia ora, Tim.
Kia ora, Tim. Mihi atu ki a koe mō tō karakia, mō tō manakitanga o tēnei hui. So I'm Yeta from Network Waitangi Whangārei, and I'll just, I know people are anxious to hear from our wonderful panel, so I'll just run through a very quick few housekeeping things that we're required to do. If any of you should require the wharepaku, they're just to the left of where you came in, and if there should be an evacuation required, we can either leave through the door that we came in from, or there's another emergency exit just off the kitchen there. If you haven't already, please put your phones on silent so that we can all give our attention to our panel. And if you're sitting in a row where there's some seats in the middle, feel free to just move along to leave the ones at the end free for anyone who arrives a little bit later. I'll just quickly run through how the session's going to run tonight. So once I hand over to Moea, Moea will introduce Network Waitangi, give us a little bit of information about the history of Māori wards, and then first to introduce our three panelists, and they'll call it all together for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have a 5 to 10 minute break, and we'll give out pens and paper so that people can write down their questions, and then when we come back together we'll have a chance to have those questions posed to the different panelists. So we prefer to give out pen and paper and ask people to put their questions down in writing, just so that everyone can hear them when they're spoken out, and give everyone a chance to ask questions if they're perhaps too shy to put up their hand. So We do discourage people from calling out. We're recording the session, so if you call out from the floor, it just means that people can't hear you and it won't come out on the recording. So, if you've got some pārtai and you think of them while the talk's going on, feel free to note them down on your phone so that you remember them later. So after our Q&A session, which will take about 30 minutes, we'll have a wrap-up and a karakia, and then you're welcome to stick around, have a kōrero, have a bit more kai, have a look at the items on our merch table. We've got some amazing books that some of them are only really mostly available through Network Waitangi Whangārei. We've also got badges, Keep Māori Wards, and some posters and items that you might want to hang on your wall just for a koha. And and then just to finish up with, I'll just talk about our community code, or Network Waitangi tikanga. We are curious, open and respectful. We speak from our own experience. We make space and take space, and no one knows everything. So just good things to bear in mind during the session and as we listen and interact with our panel. So now I'm going to hand you over to Moea, who is one of our long-standing Network Waitangi educators.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Ieta. Kia ora koutou katoa. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. Ngā mihi mahana ki te tangata whenua o tēnei rohe, me tangata tiriti katoa. So just greetings to everybody who is from the hapū of Whangārei, Te Ringa Parawhau, and all of us who are tangata tiriti here by virtue of the Treaty of Waitangi. And that's kind of our buzz, of course. And we're having 40 years of Network Waitangi this year. So we're in sort of like, yay! Yeah. So, we've had a sort of a bit of activity this year to mark those 40 years, including lately a webinar by Dr. Margaret Mutu on constitutional change, Mātiki Mai Aotearoa. That was amazing. And before her, we had Melanie Nelson on the Regulatory Standards Bill and the Treaty Principles Bill and the Fast Track. No, we've just had a few, and they keep coming for us to react to. So just want to mihi to the cooks in the kitchen. Awesome. Thanks, Rosalind, everybody. Yeah, so make sure you eat it all up before you go, because it's a good kai. And on the merch table, Susan, kia ora Susan, probably the longest working treaty educator in the rohe, so kia ora Susan. And Les is selling all the t-shirts, because this is the t-shirts, we're modelling the flash merchandise, which is new, right, new. So it's tangata tiriti standing with tangata whenua. And on the back it's got, 1835 and 1840 foundation of Aotearoa. So, so thanks for all of Network Waitangi. Of course, we've been deluged with new members since the coalition government. So we're trying to, assimilate them into the culture of the group and everything, but they just keep coming. So thank you, coalition government. That's been great. Just briefly, 40 years, because 1985, there was a gearing up to try to educate Pākehā about the treaty, because in 1990 it was the 150th anniversary of the signing. And as it's often said, that Māori never forgot and Pākehā never knew. So in 1985, people were going, oh, what? And so Sir Paul Reeves and others were instrumental in getting some funding out of the government to educate Pākehā to at least know what was going on in 1990. And so when that finished, all the different regional groups around the country decided to carry on working, because, tip of the iceberg, we've only just started, this is just massive. And so then we became a network with regional groups throughout the country, and remain so to that day, to today. So there's just such an explosion of groups. You know, we're boring and old-fashioned keeping the Network Waitangi Whangārei name, and we've got a sister group in Otautahi, Christchurch, that also Network Waitangi Otautahi, but everybody else has gone and named themselves like really flash names like Decentering Whiteness and, you know, God, what else? Just heaps and heaps of really groovy new names, which is great. And a lot of them are online now, so you can join up at a course to, you know, have the Tauiwi Tautoko as one online group that's really effective. There's just a heap of them. And we're actually updating the famous questions and answers book now, so all of the contact details will be up on that. And of course, we think we're nearing the end of the update, and then another week and another law, and we've got this 7 pages of breaches of the treaty, legislative breaches, and so we just have to just hang on, we'll just add another one, add another one, add another one. But we're going to have to draw the line somewhere. So expect that before the end of the year. We've got amazing book groups now, and we've got a Mātiki Mai Aotearoa reading group, and that's Agnes and Pat leading that out, and we're thinking of having a reading group for the book that the author came last Wednesday, Unsettled Bliss, Whiteness in Aotearoa. And so sign up, talk to Ag over a cup of tea and sign up for those opportunities, because you're doing things in a group keeps you on track, keeps you coming, keeps you stimulated. And so that's what we hope to provide. And we are going to lead you into discussions about constitutional transformation, because I don't know about you, but I'm over this left, right, you know, blue, red, left, right, churn. And I think that, you know, we're all ready for a different way of decision making, where we can make mokopuna decisions, long-term planning. And to me, that's pretty much closely aligned to having a tiriti-based constitution. So if you're interested in what that might look like, sign up for the next reading group, Mātiki Mai, in the library on Tuesdays, I think. A lovely group of people. So, just to quickly introduce myself, with this positionality stuff, which is what you're supposed to do now, is how do I connect with the kaupapa? And so the weird thing about me is I'm an old white woman with a Māori name. Long story, but taranaki, parihaka, blah, blah, blah. But my positionality in terms of resource management in Whangārei is I worked for Ngati Wai Trust Board Resource Management for 4 or 5 years. A very challenging experience. And so when I came out of that, it was also like, okay, stand for council. So I was spectacularly unsuccessful, stood for regional council a couple of times, just completely no way, didn't get in. And so we'll talk about, you know, some of the reasons maybe why. I did consider anglicising my name to the Moea to see if that would make a difference, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Sorry about it. I think, you know, we're all here to talk about Māori Wards. The referendum is upon us. And so we're just amazingly grateful to have this panel who've got some experience in the field. So we've got Sheryl, former mayor, of course, for 9 years, from 2013 to 2022, and her time as mayor included guiding the council through the introduction of a Māori Ward and the transformation of Te Kārearea from an advisory committee to a standing committee. And don't worry, this is an educable moment, and so we do have a PowerPoint. Not slow death by PowerPoint, I promise. Just a few quick slides so we're all on the same page, so we understand what Te Kārearea is and the different names that you might not be that familiar with, okay? And a little bit of the history of the Māori Ward saga. It's a saga. There's a bend and a twist every 3 years. So kia ora Sheryl, and Mike Kake has worked for the Electoral Commission as a community engagement advisor over several general elections. His background is in media and he continues to represent Ngati Hau and Te Parawhau, hapū and Ngapuhi iwi at local government level.
Kia ora.
And Dr. Carol Peters is a current member of the Whangārei District Council, where she serves as Deputy Chair of the Community Development and champions affordable housing initiatives for older people. And, you know, the list of Carol's accomplishments can go on and on and on. So we'll just, we'll start with you, Sheryl, just to do a mihi.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa. It's fabulous to be in this room with people who have an interest in the future for Māori wards. And we had a session earlier today, so it's just really nice to think that there's additional interest from our community. And one of the things that I mentioned this today was to check with everybody where you feel about whether or not you'll vote in the referendum to retain the Māori Ward, or whether you'll vote to dismiss it, and to check later on this evening whether or not your position may have changed, because it really is important, particularly for Pākehā, to be the treaty partner that Māori would want us to be, and that involves telling people why we want to retain the Māori Ward, and I'm hoping that everybody in this room will do exactly that. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko pari haka te maunga, hā te awa, pehe auri te marae, Ngati Hau, me te Parawhau, me te roroa ki opua o ngā hapū, Ngapuhi te iwi. Tēnā rā koutou, e ngā mihi ki a koutou o ngā hapū, o ngā iwi ki Whangārei te ringa Prawa, me te whānau whānui o te tiriti o Waitangi, ngā mihi, tēnā koutou, kia ora huhi mano tātou katoa.
Kia ora, everyone. I've been living, and 5 generations of my family have been living in Whangārei, and on and off I've lived all my life here. I really want this place to be a good place to live, and I think that what we're talking about tonight is actually really important for that. That it's a place where there's accord, and there are ways to work through just differences. And we have differences. So that is actually really important to me. And so I'm really glad to see you here. And I'm thrilled to be talking about the advantages of Māori wards, remembering that Māori wards are only a step on the path that we have in Aotearoa, New Zealand, to having a constitution that reflects te treaty. Thank you.
Kia ora. So here's the PowerPoint. It's a bit of just a quick how we got to this point. Every council has to review their representation arrangements every 6 years. So when they do that, they decide on the number of councillors, how they're elected from wards or at large or a mix of both, boundaries of the wards and their names, and also the Māori wards. So every 6 years we do this review. Okay. Now there's some significant years, 2021 and 2024, and then before 2021. So up to 24 councils attempted to establish Māori wards, but only 2 were successful. Why is that? Because under the law at that time, if a council voted to establish a Māori ward, 5% of people on the electoral roll in that district could petition the council. They got 5% of voters. They could say, oh, we've got to have a referendum. So it's used by people wanting to not have Māori wards. So that was the case, and so only the 2 out of the 24 managed to get across. And this phrase, the tyranny of the majority, usually stopped the wards once it went to a referendum. So 10 councils were forced to hold referenda and only 1 retained its Māori ward. So it's a real uphill battle, right? Because you've got that white majority who say, no. So in 2021, Labour came to power, and Nanaia Mahuta was the local government minister. She changed the law to get rid of that 5% of voters forcing a referendum. So that was completely got rid of. And so that opened the doors. 46 councils, including WDC and NRC, decided to establish wards for either 22 or 25 elections. So what happened in Whangārei, and we'll get Sheryl to go over this because she was obviously central to that. But the council voted to introduce a Māori ward, and then after the 2021 law change, referenda were not allowed. And then when the law changed, the district council had 3 months to confirm their decision. And then that's 3 months later, so the council's decision to introduce the Māori ward was challenged by some of the councils, and they can be named, they're on the record, who said, nah, we're not going to have them. Some of them are standing again. But yeah, so however they lost, and 8 out of 13 said, yeah, we're going to keep them. So that's how they've been kept. And so the Māori ward was introduced last elections with 2 councillors representing the entire ward. So that's Deb Harding from Patu Harakeke and Phoenix Roka are the 2 Māori councillors. So over in the regional council, same thing, NRC voted to create a Māori ward because there had been very few Māori councillors. Dover Samuels, right, was one of them for a long time. And Winston's brother, Ian Peters was one of them, but very, very few and far between. So they decided to establish Te Raki Māori Award with 2 councillors covering the whole of Te Tai Tokiro, so the whole from a big ward. And they were elected in October 22. That's Tatui Shortland, who was here this afternoon, and Peter Lucas Jones. So they're the 2 Māori wards. And then change it up again. So we now have the current government elected, and last year they decided to change it back to how it was in the old styles, that 5% of voters on the roll could force a referendum. It also required councils that established the wards after 2020 without a poll. They had 2 choices, either disestablish them or hold a binding referendum, which is what we're doing now. And so there's 43 councils throughout the whole country doing that. And Kaipara, if you remember, they voted to disestablish their ward. They didn't even bother going to the referendum. And of course, do you remember seeing the news of how well that went down with the tangata whenua over in Te Roroa, that fateful day, a horrible day for them. So just because this is a teachable moment, it is a complex situation because people say, oh, you've got this relationship with hapū, so why do you need Māori wards, councillors as well? So the reason for why it's and, not or, is because the Treaty of Waitangi gives tangata whenua 2 sets of rights. So Article 2 is about that mana whenua right, tino rangatiratanga, that's about group rights. But it also gives Article 3 right, which is to give individual rights to Māori the same as British citizens. And so that includes an individual vote in this crazy voting system called, you know, the Westminster whatever voting system. So Māori do have 2 sets of rights, yes, you know, handle it. Everybody needs to handle that, okay, because it just is, it's a fact. And of course, Pākehā, we got Article 1 right, which was to bring, to exercise the British common law jurisdiction over Pākehā people who are living here, right, for her people, for the Queen's, for her people, okay? So that's why it's and, not or. So what does that look like in practice? So for District Council, so that's Article 1, the right to, you know, the right to exercise jurisdiction over Pākehā. So we're coming down that side of the partnership. Now there's 36% roughly Māori in Whangārei, but not all of them are on the Māori roll. So there's a lesser number, which comes down to say that we've got proportionally between the Māori roll and the general roll 2 Māori councillors, right? That's the proportion. So, and everybody gets to vote for the mayor. So if whatever roll you're on, you'll get 1 vote for the mayor. Now this year it's going to be STV, which is not a sexually transmitted voting issue, right? It stands for single transferable vote. And so it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You must rank your candidates sequentially, otherwise you're going to disallow your ballot, right? So make sure you got a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right to the end. So a computer sorts that out, and we get an amalgam of the best candidates over that whole voting spectrum. And it's preferable, some people say, to first past the post, because if you say, you know, you vote for your person, but they don't get in for some reason, your second preference and your third preference goes back into the mix. And so your second and third preferences affect the outcome, all right? So it's not all or nothing, it's a more nuanced reading of the room, which is a wonderful thing. And in the regional council, this more of the tiriti relationship with the Whangarei District Council, with its 2 Māori Ward councillors, has a tiriti relationship with Te Huinga. Now, Te Huinga is the name for the collection of hapū representatives, hapū in Whangarei Taringa Parawhau. So that's their name, Te Huinga. So they are place and kin based and selected internally. Whereas on the Pākehā side, of course, we're always elected and values based, if we're lucky to find out what the values of the candidates are. And that's our job, is to grill them to find out what their values are, right? So both of those 2 treaty parties have 8 members each on Te Kārearea. And so this is the standing committee, which is designed to bring that communication, the bridge. It's the bridge, okay? So in the Northland Regional Council, they're sticking with first past the post. So remember that when you're voting for your regional council person, do the tick, not the 1, 2, 3, okay? So the regional council, same thing, the proportion on the Māori roll means there's 2 councillors and 7 on the general roll. And their relationship, treaty-based relationship, looks like this. They are partnered up with Te Kahu o Taunui, which is a collection of iwi throughout the whole of Northland. And both those governance bodies select people to stand in Te Ruarangi, which is the bridge for the regional council between tangata whenua and tangata tiriti. Okay, can you handle that? Yes, okay. Right, so Sheryl, you were in the hot seat about when the district council embarked on this journey. How did it come about? How was it for you?
When we introduced the Māori Ward in November 2020, it was actually the second time as I was mayor that we had done a representation review. One of the benefits, of course, of being a mayor for 9 years, we got two kind of bites. The prior term of council rejected introducing a Māori Ward completely. And I was just reflecting also, as a councillor, I served on 2 terms of council, and we did a representation review then, and the council of the day also rejected the idea of introducing a Māori Ward. And finally, in November of 2020, we did have the wonderful decision made that we would introduce a Māori Ward. We made that while the legislation was still in place for 5% of electors to to sign a petition and trigger a poll. That was in the November, and as Moea's pointed out, in the March of the following year, that requirement was repealed with the amendment that Minister Mahuta led. Interestingly, between November and March, there was a petition organised in Whangārei, and they did end up with 5% electors and were presenting it to council, but it was presented after the legislation had changed, so we didn't actually receive the petition. One of the things that the council of the day recognised was that because local government is a democratic process. It is about representative democracy. It's about having the voices of the people who make up your community. Interestingly, the electoral population for people on the Māori roll in June of 2024 was 19,300. So that's how we ended up with two Māori Ward rolls. I compare that with the Bream Bay Ward, which has 2 councillors. They represent 14,500 people. So a similar sort of numbers, and it's that representative model. You could argue that by introducing the Bream Bay Ward, we were ensuring that we had the voice of those 14,500 people who have a community of interest in Waipu and Ruakaka and One Tree Point, Takahiwai, and ensuring that the interests of those people were at least heard. Not necessarily they didn't form the majority, but at least we understood what the issues were that they were facing around the council decision-making table. The same for the Hikurangi Coastal Ward. Again, 2 councillors bringing the voice of the issues that are in that area of our district. The difference, of course, was that for the Māori Ward, 5% of the population could sign a petition which triggered a poll. They couldn't do that for the Bream Bay or the Hikurangi Coastal Ward. It just really was, the anomaly was it is completely wrong in my mind. I still believe that to this day. So no other ward, council could have created any type of ward with the justification of having the voice of the people around the decision-making table. We were proud of the fact that we had introduced Māori wards for the 2 elections, the first 2022 and the second 2025. I will never forget the crew from Te Kārearea who came, and young people just celebrated with waiata when we made that decision. Oh, it made my heart sing. It was just really, really special. So that brought about, of course, the 2 Māori Ward councillors who serve on this council. I reflected at the time all of the candidates for the Māori Ward would have made fantastic elected members. Some of them, yeah, I won't go that far. So it was a really proud time, and I'm sad in a way that I haven't been able to serve as mayor with those voices around the table, but I am delighted to see the quality of the additional aspects to decision making that they bring to the table. Ngā mihi.
Right. Kia ora. So Mike, we know why we're voting on them now, but why do you think that Māori wards are an essential component of our democracy?
Well, basically, I think you've always got to have the Indigenous world view in a room at some point that can create and lead by example. I think with the Māori Wards established as it was, and really it's a travesty for me that we've actually gone backwards again when they've reintroduced the 5%, because we're pushing this variable uphill in terms of winning this retainment of Māori wards. I mean, when your population is able to vote across the whole geographical situation in terms of numbers, we're always going to be behind the 8 ball in this game. And it's happened, we know, you can just go by the history, that it's pretty hard to win a referendum when you've got a huge majority against you in terms of taking from the total vote in public. So for me, from a Māori perspective, it's really hard yakka, and it's hard to take, because Māori have served this country well in terms of, in terms of World War I and World War II, our Māori soldiers that left, including my father and my uncles, left with A Company of the 28th Māori Battalion. They went to fight for our democracy, and a democracy that is even and fair. And that's what I find very difficult to swallow. And we actually had it there, and now a 3-year term, that's the first we've got, and now we're back to step one. For me, in terms of Māori participating with Māori Wards, they bring a strength to the governance through Te Kārearea in terms of the representation of the 2 Māori Wards. But to have them permanently, the Māori Wards have maintained a strong leadership and influence within that Te Kārearea strategic partnership. We've advocated for meaningful partnership in terms of resourcing, equity during long-term planning and major planning reviews. So our councillors work hard. They work hard because geographically they've got a huge area to cover. So for me, I just see all the good, and I know that it comes from the swing of whatever government comes in, and you get this swing against from left to right, but it puts us back. And I'm really peeved that we have to go through this performance again, to be honest. Yeah.
Kia ora, Mike. And I was just thinking too about, that the price of citizenship that you're talking about is the name of the museum up at Waitangi. Isn't it about that that the soldiers who went in the Māori battalion felt that if they fought alongside their Pākehā brothers, there would be an end to discrimination when they got back home, and unfortunately that just did not happen. And also the balloting, the Pākehā soldiers who came back from both World Wars were given Māori land to farm and state advances loans to borrow to farm that land, and the Māori soldiers were not. It's a little known fact in Pākehā society, but that shows you just how that intergenerational growing up without assets actually occurred, and particularly grievous when the loss of life was so high. I think it was the highest of any fighting battalion in the world. Something like 20%.
And I think that is a major tragedy which has put us on the back foot. We lost a generation of leaders through that commitment for democracy. And to be fighting this sort of what I call a petty battle over 2 seats or two wards over a population of 34%, well, of Māori, and the other 63 or whatever it is, Pākehā. It's just ludicrous to me, anyway. Yeah.
And you mentioned of the ballots. That happened in Whangārei, and it put some families ahead, and it put Māori families behind. So that has an ongoing effect for those families.
Yep. So Carol, what's your why? What's your reason for supporting Māori wards?
I want to, as I said before, I want to live in a fair country, and I want us to have good relationships and a combined future for my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, where they're living in a country that actually has people that have a way to work out any differences. Yeah.
Right. So while we've got you, Carol, you've got this unique experience of being on the council before, during and after the instigation of the wards. Can you tell us what the sort of either qualitative or quantitative difference those two councillors have made around the table?
The big difference is, there are many differences, but one big one for me is that we have representatives of tangata whenua in the room for decision making. They can share their knowledge, and with the particular choice of representatives that we've had in this 3-year term, they're able to quietly and with friendship point out differences that need to be made, point out areas where hapū might want the decision making to go. And because they've done that so in a rangi Māori way, they have had a great influence on decision making. There's an increased trust too from tangata whenua because they have got their representatives in the room. You know that, and there's been a particular difficulty that has been assisted by having this, and that's the sites of significance. So traditionally, hapū have been very, very cagey about identifying sites of significance, and it's because they don't trust the council. When they had 2 representatives in the room, that trust increased, and we have been able over this 3 years to increase our mapping of sites of significance, and this stops incidents where those sites are being trampled on in error when you don't know. I know one of my neighbours called me and said, I've got this cave on my property that I've just bought, and what do you think? I'm worried about doing the wrong thing. And sure enough, of course, it's on Buruarangi, as people will know. That is a place of burial. That's the big mountain as you go south from Whangārei on your right-hand side, and it is a burial ground. And so she was able to identify that that site was not something that their children should go into. The other thing is that Māori generally often didn't take much interest in what happened in council because it's seen as something other. When they had their own representatives there, that interest increased, and that actually being involved in the social and decision making of decisions of council was better for Māori generally. In the debate on 3 waters, people remember 3 waters. This was during Labour's time, and we were pressured to make decisions quickly. Remember that. And there's a new iteration of 3 waters that council had to make decisions on in 3 days. And Deb Harding, our Māori representative, people said in the council, said, well, we have to go ahead, we've got to make these decisions, we can't wait for hapū, they take a long time to make a decision. And Deb said, well, give me 24 hours and I'll consult. And she did. And that meant that when the decision was made, whichever way that went, at least there was some Māori involvement in the decision. So the other thing that happened over the two terms was the Waters money that came in, and in that period we decided to divide the money, equally, which is, I don't think normally has happened at all. It was actually quite. So that was 4.2 million, which was spent really, really carefully and thoughtfully by the hapū, and 4.2 for the Pākehā side. So the differences really are about trust, and I have 2 examples about how trust really makes a difference. One is with Ngāi Bland Bay, and I think in the first term I remember being quite nervous about the fact that people didn't want to identify wāhi tapu, as I said before. During the second term, when things had improved, we went out to the marae, and there were signs there at the side of the room saying wāhi tapu, cemetery, don't walk here. Now, there were koiwi, there were bones in the sand all along Bland Bay, and they were being exposed by the sea. And you can understand how actually really important it was to deal with that situation. And yet, previously, hapū had been so nervous they didn't want to do it because, and identifying the cemetery. Anyway, the signs were there, ready to go up. We had this discussion. We talked about where there should be fences, and it was a real collaborative effort to deal with quite a sensitive issue, a really sensitive issue. And it's an issue where there could have been conflict, there can be conflict, there can be hurting one another by doing the wrong thing, of walking where there are people's bones lying and sometimes becoming exposed. The second example is about the Nungaru seawall. And I mean, Sheryl will remember 20 years people arguing about it and worrying, and the council trying to build this seawall along Nungaru. People will know where it is. It's where the cars drive along there. And so the seawall was not built. And it was because we weren't actually asking the right people. And so that actually shows you how having representatives in the room has helped us just with that specific one. We're building it, we built it. We're now just working on the accessible areas, and I can see some of the representatives of the disability group who advised us on the accessible area that is going to be at the Nungaru beach, which is really good. I also asked the staff what difference it had made for them. And they talked about some of the things Mike has mentioned, strengthening to Te Kārearea's governance, and strategic influences across council, they have raised the hapū capacity concerns. Hapū needed more capacity in order to be able to comment on development. They're required by law to comment, but they didn't have the capacity. And they've been involved in the future development strategy, the Roaming and Parawhau Bay placemaking planning, annual plans and public submissions. So it's been really good to have Māori councillors visible at civic events and hapū-led infrastructure discussions and other key events. We've advanced the Māori framework because of them, and Māori have been engaged in that framework. So they've supported more democratic participation in council. Particularly also, just for last, they have championed areas that are very close to my heart, and that's climate change, for example, at Punuruku and Ngati Wai, and Papakainga development, as everybody knows. Housing is queen.
Cool. Kia ora, Carol. That's amazing to know. And I suppose we're just thinking about, like this morning we talked about the values that each culture brings to the decision making, that are intrinsic to that culture. We talked about, remember Joyce Ryan, make Joyce your choice, back in the day, and she had this great relationship with the rangatira of the rohi. I think every month she put on a big lunch for them, and the rangatira would go and they'd have a chat about this and that. And because of the strength of that relationship, we ended up, Whangārei, with the very best wastewater sewage treatment facility in the whole of the country. Because I know a friend of mine, Kake was a journalist, came up and said, "Hey, did you know you've got the best in the country?" And I'm going, "Is that right? No idea." But it was through that, the values of the fathers and grandfathers of a lot of current kaitiaki who shared that understanding. So in general, Sheryl, do you think that cultural values are quite different between mana whenua and manuhiri?
At risk of simplifying it too much, but in my experience, when dealing with Māori, they are very mokopuna decision based, thinking really, really long term. Forget this 3-year political cycle, 5-year, 10-year plan. It's 100,000 year thinking, which is something that we all should aspire to, and that to me is the quality of some of the qualities that Māori bring with Te Ao Māori thinking. Pākehā, again, it's at risk of simplifying it very too much, but it seems that how much can we earn, how much can we improve our lives? It's me, what's in it for me, and shorter term thinking, that at risk of offending people. That's kind of where I see some fundamental differences in values. I'm not saying that either parties have any, don't share those, but that's in my experience.
I think Pākehā are catching up with awareness about climate issues, and that the economy should be serving the people and the te ao and the land.
Yep. So here's the annual one, Sheryl. This one for you. If we have Māori wards, why don't we have Indian, Chinese, or Samoan wards? Why should Māori get special treatment?
Funnily enough, this is a really common question that is posed to me. My answer is simple. Māori don't have a treaty with India or Australia or Italy or China. They have a treaty with the Crown, and that's the Te Tiriti is our constitutional document that is the foundation for it. That's why we have are able to and should have a specific Māori ward. Another quite significant fact is that the local Electoral Act only allows councils to consider a Māori ward. There's certainly no other. And the cosmopolitan and multicultural aspect of our community is fabulous, just wonderful, and celebrate it. But when it comes back to partnership decision making, there is only one partnership, one treaty in this nation.
All right. So, Mike, you were even more unsuccessful than me,
Yes,
right?
yes. I was the most
took some
unsuccessful candidate in any local body election. This is before Māori Wards, of course. And I stood, and I must acknowledge my cousin Phil, who's here tonight, who supported me in those early days. And in terms of... but my father said to me, you've got to get to the table. You're no good doing this stuff if you don't have a crack at it, you know. But you've got to be at the table, Mike. And I said, yeah. I was working in the Erie radio at this time, and Willie Jackson said to me, you're pushing the proverbial uphill, mate. With a name like Kake, nobody understands who the hell you are. And I said to him, that's all right for you, Jackson, because you got a name like Jackson, you know. I just had this idea that we had to be at the table, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and although I wasn't successful, I got close a couple of times. I remember I did a sign for the Electoral Ward, and we were into the green waste that we're trying to develop on Lewerewa, and that's a block of land that we share. We still have it today. That's another story. But you know, and I said to the guy, I said, can you just put Mike Talks Rubbish? And he said, what? I said, just put Mike Talks Rubbish on my placard. You know, when you whack it up. And it's got a prominent site there. We know you pass the Onarahi pub and then you start climbing up the hill, and we were straight up there, and there was Mike Talks Rubbish right across the top. And a cab driver that I know, he said, look, I stopped, he said, I did a U-turn and came back and read the bloody thing, you know? And it said, you know, green waste. We're talking rubbish about green waste in small printing underneath it. But that created a bit of a thing. But there was some fun times with it and engagement. But the thought was there that if we could do something. And I'll just say a thing about Te Kārearea. It sits right next to our transfer station. This 67, 68 hectares that run from Te Kārearea across to the railway line that heads out to the south. We started working with Cliff Calhoun of Seabeck, and Sheryl will remember this. He put up the idea of a green waste, how do you put it, a green waste project which included composting and all the rest of it. We even got funding through MBIE, if I remember rightly, and I remember that craggy conservative Nick, what's his name? He was the Nick Smith. He was the Minister for Conversation. Yeah, conversation is the word. Conservation. He was the Minister for Conservation. He came up because and presented us with it, and Advocate came and gave the photos, and we were talking black gold about compost way back then. But as Sheryl knows, she'd gone overseas and everything else. We couldn't get the green waste right next door. The council didn't give us the green waste, you know, to be able to carry that idea and that project through. And it was a setback for us again, you know. So it's not about not trying to do things. Again, there was a situation there that it could have been, 25 years down the track in terms of where it would have been. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you know, pretty onto it, kind of a candidate. Like to think that I was as well in my younger days. And so, you know, we've really got to focus and acknowledge that, you know, your Māori name and my Māori name worked against us because of racism. And the racism in this town is a very conservative town. You know, one of the early settlements, I guess, where things turned to custard pretty quickly. But it's that bedrock of racism that we're on about really here. There's no other reason really why we haven't had Māori candidates elected. You know, the dearth of Māori candidates. We talked this morning about Kahu Sutherland, who is one of the very, very few Māori councillors who actually was responsible for getting this venue for $1, and he did a lot of work schemes and youth retrieval schemes through here. But it is the elephant in the room, and I think that this Māori Ward's referendum is going to bring out the worst the worst and hopefully the best of us as well. And acknowledging the racism is really just, racism is of course just the fear of the unknown. And so in a way, Māori wards themselves combat that by having those voices, so Māori voices at the table, Pākehā becoming more familiar with them. If we had a recent newspaper that reported the decision-making that goes on, that's another whole night. But with what we do have, and the communication, the social media that we've got now, there's no reason why that fear of the unknown should still exist. That we've got to have the value systems of each culture being right out there, out front, mokopuna decisions, climate change, all the rest of it. And at least, just tokenism, to put all the Māori named people into a little category over there. But it's better than nothing, which is kind of what we've had for a long time. Oh my goodness, for whom the bell tolls. We are now about to assail you with members of Network Waitangi who are going to come around and give you post-it notes and pens. And if you've got any questions on the subject, write them down, and we'll have another go with these three. If you don't have a question, you might have a thought, you might have a reflection about what we've been discussing. So very, very happy to receive those as well. And so we'll do a good 10 minutes for this. So if you want to get up, go to the toilet, get another coffee, talk to the people beside you, see how it went down, what did you reckon, what was new, what was different. Just relax for 10 minutes and then we'll bring you back together. While we're doing that, we've got another interesting factual slide which we'll put up, so if you get bored you can have a look at some weird facts to keep you entertained. So kia ora. I hope you've had a chance to have a look at these pretty disgusting facts about our history.
I was just thinking whether they're half-caste Māori,
yes,
like myself.
Yes, the half-caste Māori.
I could get 3 votes, Scots, Irish and Ngapuhi.
Yeah, 1975. God, I'm even born by then and we're still doing that. Carol, got a specific request for you to speak to about one of your colleagues.
So Moea talked about the 8 votes and the people that voted against Māori wards in Sheryl's time. One of the people that voted against was Phil House. And he was really adamant about why it was not a good idea. And this term, earlier this year, he came out in public and said he'd changed his mind. And his experience of working beside Māori ward councillors changed his mind.
Yeah. I think Kahu must have given them a bit of a talking to,
Okay, so here's one, maybe Sheryl, you might want to pick this one up. Apart from Māori wards, what are other ways we can build mokopuna thinking, mokopuna decision thinking, into our democratic systems, so we can avoid wasting resources with political churn? You talked this morning about the other options, about appointing, like Julianne?
Yes, local government have other options that enable Māori to be around the decision-making table. They can appoint people to committees and they can appoint them with voting rights. And that, in my experience, has happened. In my first term as mayor, we had the planning committee, had Julianne Chettam, who is a qualified planner in and of her own right, and she was part of our committee and added tremendous value. In fact, it's a very similar thing to having, for example, an independent chair for a risk and audit committee, just bringing in expertise from outside. So if that expertise does not arrive around the table through a democratic process, there are other options for councils to pursue. Not many of the whangārei councils have done that because there is a strong pushback against that by some members.
Right. Which kind of leads me to this next question. Who should we vote for? It's a real lottery, isn't it? It's a real lottery, local government, because you're not allowed to say, oh, I voted Labour or I voted National. Nobody likes that in local government elections for some reason, and yet how do you get a picture? Really, you get these 250-word statements in the paper. There's not really enough to go on, eh?
This term, the council's going to put little videos up where each candidate speaks. So that might help. Okay. 2 minutes.
Once the candidate lists are out, I think it'll be easier for people to engage with each other about what we know about particular candidates. So until the options for people to put their hats into the ring, I can see lots of people here tonight who will be doing exactly that. 12 o'clock is your midday on Friday is your deadline. So go for it.
Right. And someone's pinched my STV fact sheet, but it's really, really simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We had a sceptic this afternoon who thought, no, that was just so open to technical malfunction. So we had an interesting conversation. I wouldn't say that was a widespread view that we do have, and we're probably likely that we're quite confident that the STV gives your second and third votes the power, right? So do that thing. You can rank all the candidates you want, but if you only want to rank 1 or 2, that's okay. Your vote will still be counted. Your vote won't be counted if you don't rank anyone at all with a 1, or if you rank more than one person with a 1. Don't do that. Don't do that. Or if you use ticks instead of numbers. So pay attention, read the instructions, make sure the teenagers know in your household what's going on. And if you make a mistake, like accidentally ranking 2 candidates with 3s, your earlier rankings will still count, but your vote won't be able to transfer to help them or anyone lower. All right, so sequential. Don't get distracted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, So we talked about this morning. Are Māori wards just an incremental step on the way to true tiriti-based constitutional decision making? Any comments from anyone? Incremental change?
I would say so. Mm-hmm. It's not the end, but you need to take small steps to get somewhere. You don't normally take an enormous jump.
And change is inevitable. When you think of when government was formed in this country, there were no Māori seats. Then they were introduced. The numbers haven't changed significantly. They should have. And also the ability for local governments to introduce a Māori Ward by recollection that was introduced by a Labour government with Helen Clark as the Prime Minister. And it was only able to be introduced with the addition of the poll and the petition in the poll. That's how they got it over the line. And that has changed a number of times subsequently. So change is inevitable as long as we keep pointing in the right direction, the long term. I'm
just going to speak from the heart here a bit, because I'm still thinking along this, if I can. We can't get this over the line without our friends' vote. The Māori can vote as much as they want. We don't have the numbers. We need your support. We need your support and your whānau support. I'm talking to Te Tiriti whānau here tonight, I know, the majority of you. And we really do need your help because it's just the way it's stacked. But I've been around long enough, I may not have got elected, but what I have done is managed to stay with Te Huinga, and I'm with Te Huinga today, still with them, the committee. I work with the hapū engagement group. Moea Armstrong and Danella are here tonight, and we're part of the team that have been working and promoting our engagement in this space. And it's the first time that we've managed to be able to work this way in support of the Electoral Commission, because honestly, the Electoral Commission haven't put anything up. They've got to put a good rep up, but they've not put any money into this. They are more basically, I think they've had it pretty toned down, but they are more the general election. But Horny Flower is doing a good job, I will say that. Yeah, and I acknowledge him here as well. But we really do need the support of our Tiriti partners. E ngā mihi kia koutou. Kia ora.
We've got a statement here. We need Māori representatives to ensure that land taken under the Public Works Act, Māori land taken under the Public Works Act, gets returned. Statement, kia ora. And, we were talking too about how Shane Jones was really instrumental in the making of the Resource Management Act in 1991. He put the treaty in, he put kaitiakitanga in, all of the rest of it, and now he's saying he doesn't want regional councils anymore. So I've been hearing voices say, okay, don't have regional councils anymore, but give the land back and the office buildings and maybe some staff salaries for 5 years, and then we'll see you later. So that would be kind of good, wouldn't it? Because in fact, actually, same with the North Tech issue, I don't know if you're aware, but the Waitangi Tribunal in this stage 2 of the Ngapuhi claims said that all Crown land in Taitokoro needs to be returned. So, let's start. Let's do it. So we'll be having, so you'll be in charge of North Tech, Mike, and the Regional Council. Big mahi ahead. Yeah. But I think we're all clear about the values that those institutions would be operating under.
I mean, the amount of reserves that council have, and I know that there are, they should be land banked towards the treaty settlement of Māori land. You look at Parawhau, for instance. I mean, that's a huge opportunity for us there in terms of a kura, in terms of whatever we wanted to do on that space. And that's a historic site. They took all the topsoil off it and used that to build the airport way back in the day. That's where all the topsoil went for the airport, from that site at Parawhau. So that is historically a very symbolic piece of land for Māori, for this area.
Te roro's pā. Actually I do workshops with some council staff and occasionally councillors as well. Well, I must say, never been 100% attendance rate by the councillors in the treaty workshops, but the council staff, and we were talking about land back, and the one I remember they said, I look after all the little parcels of land for the council. And I said, do you? She said, you're the hoha. We have to mow them and everything. Love to give them back. Okay. So, Somebody's still a little bit confused. The Māori Ward representatives do have a vote, but of course they have to sign the oath of office just like all the other ones, that they make decisions in the best interest of the whole of the rohe, right? So they can't have that sectarian interest going on, supposedly, yeah. However, Te Kārearea, you don't get a vote, right? You don't have a budget, you have an operational budget to keep yourselves going, but you don't have any kind of voting or decision-making powers or any sort of budget.
No, they've got to go to the full council.
Yeah. And that's the same with Te Ruarangi, presumably, with the regional council?
Don't know.
No, again, it's got to go to the full council.
It's got to go to the full council.
No.
Yeah.
Te Tīmak
no
and Ruarangi
power,
are
no
still
money.
just advisory committees.
Yeah. So actually, the Māori wards are more powerful in this setup than the actual hapū
Māori wards are more
representation.
powerful,
Yeah. Okay, what do you think, any of you, what do you think opponents of Māori wards are scared of? And what does their position reflect at a deeper level?
Losing control, losing land. Am I right?
For some Pākehā, I would imagine that they see the activism side of Māori and are fearful that the people who may sit around a council table will be activists and anti-government or whatever. There's fear on all sorts of different levels. That may be one of them. I think there's also a fear of losing the control, the sense of power, and I guess in a way that's an understandable, recognisable fear. So it is up to us to reassure our Pākehā friends that the benefits far outweigh any concerns that they may have. But to be fair, I guess in this term of the regional council, they had some raru at the beginning where there was some conflict to the point where it was noted and encouraged that calm the farm kind of thing. So there may be people up and down the motu who see different, have different experiences. So it's an understandable, I think, fear of a change in that regard.
Yeah, change is always scary, eh? What's a simple answer to the statement we often hear that Māori wards are a form of apartheid?
Well, they're not.
Kia ora.
They're not.
Yeah.
I don't see how to make a statement.
Any more than the Bream Bay Ward is having apartheid by getting its own darn vote.
Yeah, the way they are.
And also the councillors for the Bream Bay Ward, just the same as the councillors for Māori wards, they go in and swear an oath, as Sheryl said before, to support everyone.
Right. Yeah.
So they need to be not just representing the Bream Bay Ward.
Or the Māori Ward.
Or the Māori Ward.
It's the complete opposite of apartheid. It's inclusion.
Yeah, it's inclusion.
Total opposite.
And that's a fact, because when you are on the Kārearea, you're there for everybody across the community that you see. So that's a fair step away, a long step away from apartheid.
So the word itself, apartheid, is apart with hate, right? So this is an inclusion and let's get it together. So it's a completely, and the powerless in this situation, I guess, would be the hapū, and they want it. So which is quite a different situation to previously in South Africa, where the powerless did not want that separation. So, Workshop 101. So how do we front foot the upcoming referendum?
How do we, sorry?
Front foot it. And I know
front-footed.
Yetta's got a worksheet, I think is down on the merchandise table, because we will be organising some things. If we get enough interest and volunteers, you know, there's leafleting options, there's social media options, postering, placarding, billboards. You know, there's a whole lot of work to do in any campaign. So if you're up for a little bit of it, I encourage you to put your name down there, and so then we can organise a bit more carefully with knowing what resources are there to help us do that. And it reminds me of one of these other ones, that how could these stories of the benefit be shared with the public who don't understand the benefits? So that's campaigning, that's sophisticated campaigning, isn't it, when you're sharing the stories? But
And this is going to be shared online, I understand.
True that, this whole webinar, our awesome cameraman down the end, and so very quickly it'll be a priority for us, and you can share the recording.
And possibly, because people don't really watch more than a minute or two, we might have some clips taken out of it with the answer to some of these pertinent questions.
Yeah.
Word of mouth is still powerful, very powerful. And, you know, we've got an ambassador, each one of these people are ambassadors, and that's what we need. We need ambassadors to talk to your whānau and just give them the nudge is what we want. Because you can be ambassadors for us, because that's where we can win some more votes that we need. Yeah.
All right. Maybe we'll have a look at the next slide, Yetta. Just some more fun facts.
Have we got it on our little thing?
So we've got a couple there. Waitahu can appoint 2 representatives to Environment Canterbury and change them at any time. How about that? That required an act of Parliament specifically on that issue. But that to me is the ultimate in Māori Ward's accountability, is that if Kaitahu can appoint them and take them off and on. If they're not performing, put new people on, but there's that solid institutional knowledge that is not subject to any voting mechanism at all. So you know, I guess if we are looking at if the referendum fails, you know, it's possible we could just do some sort of act of Parliament potentially, and you know that would be quite different situation from Kaitahu. Up here it would be quite challenging because you know rangatira on every hill and all the rest of it. But, you know, worthwhile considering. And by the way, non-Māori can stand for Māori seats locally and nationally. Don't do that thing. Don't do that thing. That is just outright embarrassing. I think this morning we decided, you know, there was a question, can non-Māori represent Māori at all? Answer, no. So don't go there. And of course we've got the website māoriwards.nz and Action Station's beautiful motto, decide together, thrive together, which is I guess what it's all about.
Moea, can I just add one of the tools in the toolkit? There was a quote that I wrote down because it's so powerful. And for all of us, if we can remember that the rights of a minority group should never be decided by the majority.
Kia ora. Yeah. That's right.
Unless they're an enlightened majority.
Okay, so I think it's time for just a wrap up around. If there's anything that you would like to say that you haven't already said, you know, your takeaway, why this referendum's important, why Māori wards are important.
the fundamental question that I have been posing for myself is, why do I support a Māori ward? And it's the thing that I will be contemplating on, and making sure that when I speak with people, I'll be able to say with confidence, I support a Māori ward because it's the right thing to do, it's fair, it provides equity, and it provides an enriched decision-making process for local government. So those are the really fundamental things for me that the people I speak with can have a differing opinion, but that is that's my truth.
Yeah, for me, I'll go back to what I said previously around our history, around our fight for democracy for Māori, who served in World War I and World War II. My granduncle, Jack Kake, was what do they call them? A tunneler, thank you, of Aris. And he was in Aris. And the tunnel of Aris, it's now a museum there under the city of Aris. It was made of balsa chalk foundation, and they just did these tunnels of chalk under the German front line, and their tunnelling included rolling out dynamite or and rolling this stuff out, taking it, set it up and dynamite the trenches, and they'd dig a little trench tunnel themselves, because when you lit it, you're going to get a reaction coming down, and they used to dig the things behind them and light the thing, and down the line it come. He came out of that war with his ears. It's just tragic, really. You know, he just couldn't. He mumbled when he talked, and he just couldn't thing. But I remember this story. Next to us in First Avenue was a guy called Don McLeod. He was a prisoner of war, World War II. And Don was a hard man. My Uncle Jack used to come down, get off the bus and off Kenfield Dairy there, and walk down the alleyway, and he used to just trudge diagonally across Don's front lawn, you know. And Don would be yelling at him. Yeah, well, he'd just mowed his lawn, you know. Don would be yelling at him, you know, get up, boy. He just, Uncle Jack just kept running, didn't even bother him. So Dad, you know, just watch this was, so Dad had to go over and say to Don, he's actually a tunnel of Aris. And Don's face just dropped, and he just realised, and he was a hard man, realised what those people did and what they got through. Yeah, it changed the whole thing, yeah. And there was Dad from the 28th Māori Battalion, Don McLeod, a prisoner of war, and my Uncle Jack and his walking across. Yeah. So that's it. And when we see how you know, we are politically unrepresented, when we see the end of the breaches of our treaty rights as Indigenous people of this country. And I'm going to print something from Carol here. Having a good country to live in and having peaceful relationships is a basic sense of fairness. Yeah, and that's from her. That's it. So I think that's a beautiful thing for me to end on. So kia ora tātou.
Can't top that. So what would happen if we didn't get them? If we didn't get this through, what would happen? Well, I think we'd have Māori less engaged. They'd immediately go back and say, what the hell? And they would be less trusting of the system of council decision making. And that's a real retrograde having seen that last 2 terms, you know, that slow incremental. So I really want to see a future where that increases, and that as we continue to apply the Māori engagement framework in council, that we continue to see those relationships better, and that we train all of our workers in council so that they are more understanding about all people's perspectives, all people's, and a future. And I, of course, what I want is a future for my grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, for this to be a very nice place to live with neighbours that know each other and make allowances for them, each other.
Okay, so just as we wrap up, and I think Yetta's going to do some of that. What we're hearing all over the socials today is that people are finding out that they thought they were enrolled and they're not, and a lot of that is human error in terms of the manual inputting into the database, and particularly, you know, it's possible that Pākehā doing that data inputting, you know, not attuned to the Māori names and spellings, and so if you only get one letter wrong, you're deemed to be not enrolled. So really, it'd be great to get the message out there that everybody needs to check before Friday that your enrolment is rock solid, and your kids and everybody else, cousins, everybody's actually legitimate on that role, because you're going to turn up and there's going to be a lot of hassle if you're not on there. So kia ora. You go onto the website, or you can ring up the Electoral Commission 0800 number at the back there. Vote.nz. Yep, that's how. Easy peasy. Check it once, get it right.
Kia ora, Moea. So just, yes, vote.nz is where you check. I checked for our whānau last night and found that all of our whānau, despite having received enrolment packs in the past, one of them couldn't be found. So even if you think you're on the electoral roll, double check. Just while the kōrero was going on, a couple of things, as Moea pointed out, we have a form at the back of the room if you wanted to help Network Waitangi in our efforts to try and keep Māori wards. One of the things we're doing, as well as filming this session, is looking for people, influential people in the community who would be willing to do short video clips that we can release on our social media channels, and maybe unexpected people who might kind of resonate more with people who are undecided or haven't, don't really understand the issue. So sort of go, oh, that person, well, you were talking about Phil Hulse, for example, people that are, perhaps, not known for their pro-Māori views, but who might speak out in favour of them. We'd love to hear from you about that, and you can use that form as well. So just a quick plug for, this is one of a series of 4 events, so, and this is the second one. So next week we actually have Paddy the Pākehā, a Pākehā fella from Whanganui, and he is a TikTok influencer with about 20,000 followers who I've been following, and he's an amazing young man. And he just does the most beautiful kōrero, explaining things like aren't Māori wards apartheid, or isn't Pākehā like a swear word, just like just talking to people and dispelling a few myths. And if you're not on TikTok, this would be an excellent opportunity to hear him, bring some of your rangatahi along. He's really, really an inspirational speaker and a very humble man. And if you've got anyone who you think might be interested in coming along, feel free to take posters and flyers from out by the door there. Grab things about our workshops, which are on the merch table and by the door. Buy a t-shirt, get a Vote Keep Māori Wards badge. And make sure you're enrolled to vote. So as Network Waitangi, we've been practicing a new song. So we'll just, while everyone's assembling for that, I just got a couple of koha to give to our speakers, just to say thank you very much for being on our panel today. So I'll just grab those and say kia ora very much. So this is a song that's been written by one of our young members, Leah, who's not actually here tonight, but she's written it especially for Network Waitangi, because we're all a bit shy and we're not very good at singing, so her mum, Belle, is going to lead us.
In the spirit of standing together, let's finish with the final karakia. Karakia about unity, about working together. Whakamaua te kōrero, whakamaua te wānanga, whakamaua kia ranginui e tui hoa nei, whakamaua kia papatua nuku o takoto ake nei, whakatina ki te tūmara o te maramatanga, whakatina kia tina, haumi e, hui e, tāki e, kia ora tātou.
What brought you out here tonight?
Because I support Māori Wards, but I wanted to be able to answer questions for people who ask me why I support them.
And what have you taken from, what's your biggest takeaway?
I'm trying to remember Cheryl's answer where I think, why should majority decide for minority? That's really my taking point, yeah. I'll probably give that some more thought and trying to articulate that better, but yeah, why should majority decide for minority? Yeah.
What brought you out here tonight?
Because I deeply support Te Tiriti and I deeply support what the aims of Network Waitangi are. And I came from the coloniser, and I've been re-educating myself ever since.
And what's your biggest takeaway from the session tonight?
This takes so long. I want better change. I want faster change than we're getting. That's my biggest takeaway.
What brought you out here tonight?
To be honest, progress. I see everything that as partnerships as progress.
What brought you out here tonight?
I really wanted to support what you're doing, and I want to understand how to talk to people about,
And what's your biggest takeaway?
The support from everybody here, I think, made me feel stronger to go out and talk to other people.
Thank you. What brought you out here tonight?
Well, I'm a really good friend of Carol Peters.
Yes, okay.
And full of admiration for her and for Mike and Sheryl. And I think it's really important to get... I know what I'm thinking, and sometimes it just helps to come to these forums so that you can articulate in a really positive way about what we're for, which of course is this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's the biggest takeaway? What's your biggest takeaway from tonight?
I think it's just having the conversations, go and talk to people, and perhaps talk to the people that need a little bit more convincing, but do it in a non-combative way, and just say what I think Sheryl summed it up really well, saying, this is the right thing to do. It's fair, and it's respectful, and it's the right thing to do. Just keep it simple, really. But, yeah.
Thank you.